Hello YouTube, this is pecktec, and I've just returned from a long drive to Wisconsin where I celebrated Halloween at TeslaCon. And those videos will be coming up soon, but today I'm here to talk about the Fluval Spec 2.6 gallon. Now I have the other two Fluval Specs, the 2 gallon and the 5 gallon, and I really enjoy them, so I thought why not try out this other one. This is the this is slightly larger, I guess, than the original Fluval Spec. It's got a light that's more similar to the 5 gallon Fluval Spec, and it'll be interesting to kind of see what this one's like. So we're going to take a quick look inside this box, and then I'm going to set it up. Now a lot of unboxings are kind of slow and they take a long time, so we're going to try something different today. I'm going to do a super unboxing. So here we go. Ready? Bam! Alright. And here it is. Right away I can see that this aquarium is, of course, now it's a half gallon larger than the other Fluval Spec, but it's a different, it looks like there's going to be a lot more room for aquascaping. I'm pretty excited about the way this one looks. It's pretty interesting. And let's take a look at the other stuff that it comes with. This of course is the tube that we'll use for running the water from the pump. And here's the light. Ah yes, this light is very similar to the 5 gallon Fluval Spec. It's got a lot of LEDs and this nice little aluminum holder, which is pretty cool. Imagine that'll go on here. And this is more likely a power supply, kind of boring, yeah. That's the power supply, and this has got to be the pump. Yes. And the pump, which looks just like the other two, as far as I can remember. This is the exact same pump, I think, that's in the 5 gallon and also the 2 gallon. So that's cool. And really there's not a lot to it. I'm going to bring the camera in a little bit closer so you can take a closer look. Okay, so much like before, it's got the nice aluminum on the sides. It's got sort of a frosted glass on the back here, and it's got the exact same filtration system that the other two have. Actually, I already have some of this going in another tank, so I'll just swap it with that one, and some carbon. This is ceramic. If you have, I don't know if you followed the other videos or not, but just in case this is your first, this is ceramic biological media. Ceramic is very porous, and it's important to develop healthy bacteria, or beneficial bacteria. And what happens is it gets stuck in all the little nooks and crannies in here, and then it helps convert the ammonia in your water into good stuff that that fish can tolerate. And this is really the life support system of the aquarium. By contrast, this is almost optional. This is a chemical filtration that helps with water clarity. It draws particles. It gets really dirty too when you open it. But it draws particles into it, and it's basically just charcoal. It's activated charcoal. And what you can do is you can put this in and it kind of helps clarify the water. It's really especially great when you start a new tank. Or if you just find your water is getting sort of particulate and you want to add this. A lot of the pros hardly use this at all. This actually only works for just a very few days. And, you know, I think it says on most packages to replace every 30 days, but the truth is after a week or so, this really has no effect at all. Sometimes it can kind of help with the biological a little bit after a long time, but this is sort of optional. I always include it when I start a new aquarium, but later on, what I've done lately is I just swap this with another biological, and I use that instead. So I think for now, I'm just going to put that in here. A lot of people say to rinse this out. You can get some aquarium water and rinse it out if you want to make sure there's no chlorine in there. Or you can throw some, rinse it out in a regular sink, pour a bunch of dechlorinator on there and call it done also. I'm just going to stick it in. When I start a new aquarium, it's going to be covered with dirt anyway and all that sort of thing, so I just let it do its thing. Alright. There's some instructions, which I have not read in a long time. Of course, we also have this lid. I've heard a lot of mixed reviews. A lot of people hate that it's plastic. We'll say this, plastic is really easy to clean. Whereas glass, sometimes isn't. So this plastic lid fits over and kind of has little notches to kind of keep it in place so it doesn't slide off. Some people don't use lids at all. Just about any fish will jump though. Just about any fish will jump out of its aquarium. I should clean off that charcoal. So it's important to me, at least, to keep a lid on your aquarium at all times. I guess we start with the pump. Be the first thing to get installed. Whenever I install their pump, I go ahead and I set this to the fastest setting. There's a plus, there's a middle, and there's a minus. I'm not sure how effective these different speeds are. I don't notice a huge difference, but I always at least start with it on the plus to get the most flow possible. And we're going to just slide this onto here. That part actually does come off, so you can kind of get that sorted if you want, if that's easier for you. And we'll need to pull this part off the end so that it can fit through here. What I try to do, if you look at this thing real closely, you'll see that the water only comes in one spot. It's got to be right through here. And moved around in the pump and then sucked out. So I like to stick it with this part facing this way. It looks like there's a lot more room in the back than there was in the other ones. I might be mistaken about that, but there looks like there's a little bit more room in this one, especially than the 2-gallon. Let's see. So what I do is I get this part into place, so I make sure that it's going. So it's very important that it comes out the top if you want the water to come back into the aquarium. And I'm going to take a fish net and push down on the pump and get those suction cups adhered to the bottom. Seems like I remember with the other videos I made, I had to actually use the fish net to even push it down in there, but there's a lot of room in this one, so. Alright. Now with the pump installed, and this coming out the top like it's supposed to, you just simply add this little nub, and your filter's pretty much set up. Now it's just down to a little bit of aquascaping and we're ready to go. Okay, so before we get down into the real nitty gritty as far as putting the stuff in the aquarium, let me tell you about what I'm putting in there. For Substrate, especially the base, I'm using this Floor Max by Corrode, and it's been my go-to substrate for quite a while. It comes pre-rinsed. There's really minimal rinsing that you really have to do. In fact, I don't rinse it at all. I just put it straight in. And It's got a lot of good benefits. It seems to do really well. I don't see a abnormally high spike in ammonia like you do with some planted substrates, so it's been my go-to. Black's a little plain though, so I like to add a little bit of color. Sometimes I use just regular gravel for that. This time, I'm going to try to use at least these things called river gems, which are just basically river rocks. And sometimes they can look pretty drab at the store, but you'll see that once you rinse them off, they're actually quite beautiful. And they add a lot of color to your aquarium. I don't know how much or how little of this I'm going to use, but I thought it would be kind of a nice way to break up the texture, give it a little bit of color towards the bottom. I'm also going to use this really actually a rather old piece of driftwood. This has been in my 55 for years and years. You can see it's actually pretty fragile. Using an old piece of driftwood in a new aquarium helps tremendously to get that beneficial bacteria going. That beneficial bacteria grows over everything in the aquarium, not just the filter. And this is just chock full of it. I mean, this has been sitting in there for years and years, and you almost can't really see it too well in there. So in here, you'll really be able to appreciate it. It makes a nice little house, which I never see the fish go into, but you know, if they want to, they can. A nice little place to rest, and should help make this a really interesting aquascape. So that's another element. Let's start with the gravel. I know at least some of the plants I'm planning on planting are going to be root plants, so it is important to have, I'd say at least a ½ inch of the bottom available for roots, especially if you want a lot of growth. If you do it primarily in Anubis, you actually don't need a whole lot of depth, but for other plants it's really good. Now, as just about every aquascapist will tell you, it's important to kind of build this slope. I think I might have too much gravel in here. Build a slope towards the back. My experience, this whole plan tends to fall apart later on. What I mean by that is that it just seems like eventually it flattens out on its own. So you can slope it all you want, but it may not last. Okay. Now I'm going to put the driftwood in. I'm actually going to jam it into the gravel a little bit without breaking it, I hope. Alright. Now I'm actually going to try a plant I haven't used very much. It's called Micro Sword. I don't know if you can read that, but here's the scientific name. And we'll see how it does. It's a neat looking little plant, a little foreground plant. I'll squeeze off some of the water into here. Here's an easy way to remove your plants from these pots. You can't cut them away. So we're just going to kind of pull this stuff apart. This is the tricky part, really. Getting these plants loose from this stuff that they grow in without just tearing out all their roots. Some come apart really easily and others really don't, so that's not too bad. Let's kind of gently pull it away from it. It's like there's, like I said, I've never used this plant before, so what I'm going to do is just get the roots in the ground and we'll kind of go from there. It is a foreground plant. There's a couple of different schools of thought and the best way to plant some of these things. What I do is I sort of dig a trench. Get them in the trench the best I can. This is a little more uniform than I'd planned, but let's see. Might double back here a little bit. Then you just kind of come in like a bulldozer and get them right in there. The plan was actually to have them right against the glass there, so let me just back this up. I'll be adding some other rocks in here too, but I want to try to make sure that they're covered on this good substrate. That everything with a root in it is under the gravel. A couple of pieces that were separate we'll just put other places. Be interesting. I always like to take a little part of a plant and stick it in another part of the aquarium because, as you may have found out, I mean, even an inch or two in another direction could be a whole different growing experience for the plants. Now that I've added a few plants, I'm actually going to get a little bit of aquarium water and add it in here just so nothing dries out. So, it's real important. People talk about fish getting stressed out, but plants can get stressed out too. Keep them wet. That's their natural state, that's the way they like it. Doesn't do much for us being able to see what's going on here. Alright. My plan is to take some of the Vesuvius Sword that did so well in the Fluval Spec 5-gallon and add it actually around right up in the middle here. So it'll be going right in the middle where the light is. Unfortunately, the wood's so large it'll have to be using part of that space, but I get a lot of comments and questions about using CO2 in the Fluval Spec aquariums especially, and I gotta say I don't use it. I don't have it going in any of my aquariums right now. I did do a show about it just because people seem to be really interested, but to me it's just kind of a pain and unnecessary. Some plants really do need it. Most plants, if you provide light and fertilize it the way you should, then you don't really need that. I basically added some iron, I added some micronutrients, that sort of thing. That's all I've needed to be successful with plants. I keep hearing about how complicated it is. I think people just make it complicated. It's not, it doesn't have to be that way. In actuality, it's just a really simple thing. I mean, I hear people say they kill houseplants too, but think about it. Some of those people are just making excuses. They just don't want to deal with it. Well, that's fine. But don't convince others that it's so difficult just because you're lazy. If you're lazy, you're lazy. That's cool with me. Alright. You can see this plant, it just grows in this long string. But I'm going to plant it as if it was all together. Make a nice little bush. So we sort of twirled it together. And we'll stick it in together. Right here. This is another way to do it. Start like 2 inches away from where you want to go. Use your thumb to push it in, and then backfill it, and it's planted. Boy, these actually plant really easily. There's some small pieces that are giving me a time. Those are easy enough to take. Take a little tong too and just. They're in there. Looks like I'm down to just my last couple of little bits here. So you can do the same thing as I did with my hand there with the tongs. A little practice. One little just kind of. Yeah. All right. Really hate to waste anything, so I'm just gonna. A couple little sprigs. I don't know if they'll live or not, but we'll see. I can just get them in there. Another nice thing about this substrate is it seems to be really easy to plant in. I'm going to stick one behind the log and see what it does. Alright. I keep finding little parts of this everywhere. Okay. Add a little bit more water. Okay. Try not to add too much because, as you see, the water is going to be cloudy when we first fill it up, and I would like to be able to see when I'm aquascaping. Alright, last plant I'm going to add is the Vesuvius Sword. Now it's real important that this plant end up underneath the light, so I'm going to put the lid on. Take a look at where the light is, which is right here. Alright. Means I can plant one right next to the front door. And another one right here. These are actually runners from the one I have in the Spec 5-gallon. Not much root structure yet, so I'm hoping they'll be okay. A lot of growth, not a lot of root structure yet. It'll help keep these things in place, and like I said before, to add a little bit of color, I'm going to add some of these river rocks just around the base here. I always start with them around the base of whatever it is I'm trying to hold down, because more than likely when you see me adding rocks, I'm holding something down onto the ground with it. It's just the most efficient way to do it. I make sure it's not like pinning the leaves down. These need to float up. Let me start over here. There we go. Then what I'm going to do is I'll just add a smattering of them here and there, other places in the aquarium. I'll give it more natural look instead of just a pile of rocks. Several little piles of rocks. It's also important with rocks that you think about the scale. This is a really small aquarium, using really small rocks for the most part. I dug through the bottom of the little bin that these came in and actually just got the smallest rocks I could find. Alright. Well, I think it's time we filled it up. Take a look at what we got here. Alright, so what I'm doing here is I've started a siphon with a water hose from this existing aquarium. This is my 56-gallon upstairs. Grabbing water from an existing aquarium is a great way to kind of get your new tank started and make sure all the water's nice and safe and clean. And as soon as this fills up, we'll go ahead and put it in its spot, and then it's the waiting game for the fogging and all that sort of thing to subside. The other thing I'm going to go ahead and do while this is filling up is add some ceramic material that's been sitting on the top of one of my other aquariums for a long time. Go ahead and get that into place. I can do this because I'm not adding any chlorinated water whatsoever. Chlorine touches this without some sort of dechlorinator or something to kind of counteract. It will just wreck the whole process. But this being in here, the tank isn't effectively cycled, but it's so much closer than it would be if it was brand new. We're talking about speeding up things that that would take months to do normally. So it's real important that that stays clean. By clean, I mean free from chlorine or chloramine. All right. I decided to set this up next to the small Fluval Spec since they kind of fit nicely together. And they require about the same maintenance, so I'm going to top off the water. I left it a little shy of being full with some dechlorinated water. And I did this so I could move it without sloshing it everywhere. I like to fill them right to the top. And while I'm at it, a little bit for the old spec here. And we'll finish up by putting the lid on and adding the light, which just slides into this little bracket here, much like the other one did. And there it is. Now the water is going to be cloudy no matter how slowly you fill it up or what you do. The water's always cloudy at first. What I like to do is I just let it sit for a few days. In theory, I could add fish directly to this. I've only used dechlorinated water from other aquariums. I've got lots of material from other aquariums, like the driftwood, and the ceramic biological that I added. So, in theory, this could support life. It might not be the best. So I usually like to let it sit for just a few days. And the cloudiness in the water doesn't really affect the fish. They don't mind that so much. But just in case, I like to let it just sit for a day or two. And I'll probably add some fish and we'll come back and look at it after things calm down in here a little bit. Alright, and here we have my two Fluval Specs together. And I've added some Endler's live bearers and a pretty neat little beta that's different from a lot of the other betas I've seen before. He's got some odd colors to him. I thought he was kind of cool, so I threw him in here. And everybody seems to be doing great. We've been living in here for about a week or so. I've tested the water. The water's actually perfect. So I guess the ceramic, using the used ceramic has really done the trick. I added some plants to the driftwood. These are actually like little baby plants that I pulled off of other tanks. I noticed there are all these holes in the driftwood, so I just kind of inserted a few more plants in there. Kind of fills it in a little bit more and kind of makes it more interesting. And we'll see how they do. The Vesuvius Sword is doing okay, not terrific, but okay. A lot of times with new plants, it takes a while for them to acclimate to their environment. Pretty much every time you move a plant out of its environment it's been growing in, and then you put it in a new one, it has to grow new leaves to compensate. So it may be a while before this thing just looks super cool, but I'm hoping it will. I think it took 5 months for it to really kick in the 5-gallon Fluval Spec, so we'll see how long it takes in here. These things have been neat. They're a neat little plant to look at, and I'm hoping they do really well and just cover the whole bottom in this kind of grassy carpet. But time will tell. Aquariums are all about patience. I did install a heater in this aquarium, and it seems to be working nice. It's actually kind of underpowered. I think the heater I installed was actually made, it's another Hagen product, and it was designed for, I think it said 1.5 gallons, and so this is a full gallon more than it was made to serve, but it doesn't have to heat up the water very much, and I don't want to put a real high-powered heater in it, so that's what I chose to do, and we'll see how it works out. So far, it's keeping the water right in the middle of the green section of the thermometer, which means it's probably all right. And it's been really cold. It's really cold outside, so so far so good. So now, while we've got these two here at the end, let's do a little comparison between the original Fluval Spec and the new one. Now, of course, I don't have the same light that came with this one. It's this is a compact fluorescent light by Tom's, and it actually is doing really, really well. The original LED that came with the Fluval Spec, the power brick cracked, and it just stopped working. So that power brick is around 30 bucks, and I just didn't want to buy another one. I had this from some other beta bowl that I'd started a while back, and I just decided to use that instead. Alright, so here we go. Height wise, you can see it's a full maybe 1.5 inches, 2 inches taller. Width wise, there's quite a bit of difference in the width. A lot more area in the back to work with, like putting your heater or whatever you want back in the back. That's been great, actually. I can put my heater in this one without even touching the tube at all, whereas this one sort of touches just a little bit. I guess if I had to choose between the two, it might come down to how much space you have in your office or room or whatever, but I definitely would go with the 2.6 gallon. The upgraded LED is a lot nicer looking even than the original one. The extra space just helps everybody. It could mean more fish. I don't really know if the endlers will stay in here, if they'll kind of go on to another tank or not. But definitely the beta, it's going to be happier with a little bit more space. I mean, why not? They don't actually need a lot of space, I mean, to be content or whatever. As far as I can tell, by that I mean they stay healthy, they eat, they remain very attentive. This guy's still very happy in his little place and comes to see me whenever I come around, just in case I've got some food for him. So yeah, there we go. 2 Fluval Specs, 2.6 and the 2 gallon. Thank you guys, and I'll be back with more aquarium stuff before you know it. See you later.